There we go. All right. So this is a slightly old picture. You'll see that a couple of those arms have fallen off now, so I need to update that. But I am Riley, so I've been making websites for a very long time indeed. And I set up TicketLab 13 years ago. We do tickets for small business, small events, up to sort of much larger things, but it's pretty much just me running it. And my wife helps out some support emails. So I started using some of these on TicketLab, but also on other startups that I've set up and worked with other people on. And then joining John Lewis as a partner, as we call all of our employees at John Lewis, sort of applying those same things to a much larger business. As part of the John Lewis partnership, being a partner, they've also got lots of cool extra stuff they do in-house. They've got a ukulele club, and we're playing a gig at John Lewis Oxford Street on Thursday, which is very exciting. And also I've recently become a student again. They've put me on an apprenticeship to learn about how to become a better leader. Which we'll see how it goes, but at least I've got a student card, which is something I'm very, very happy with. So, vibes. Vibe coding. Who here has been vibe coding? Yeah, all right. Vibe coding is great. It's fantastic. You can just chat to it and it'll come up with something. You don't really need to pay too much attention to the code. You might want to. That's probably a good idea. But you can ask it to do something and it'll make great strides and it will come up with a lot of stuff very quickly. So if you're running a small project, it's cool. This sort of image is kind of a bit of an illustration in a literal way. It's sort of a bit like, this is a fine picture on its own. It's sort of color blocking, so you could sort of see how you might fill out your picture. But vibe coding only kind of gets you so far. So if you want to get to this beautiful mountain picture where you've sort of actually fleshed in all the details, it sort of starts to go a bit wrong. So to get further with your vibe coding project, you've got to put in more and more input to get kind of less and less out of it. If you're running in the same chat for a long time, you'll start to kind of lose the point. It'll just get like bored and it'll start chatting about other things that it's interested in. Like AI is a little bit flaky like that. You'll start to introduce bugs and they're tricky to solve because you've got to really describe where in the code you are. And if you're not following it, then trying to expect the AI to do that is quite hard. Feature development also becomes a bit of a problem. You've kind of got to a point with this project where how do we explain to it where we want to go from here? How do we reinforce these things? So we have a product requirements document. And if you don't like ducks, I'm really sorry. There's a lot of ducks in this presentation, mainly because I just liked the expression getting our ducks in a dock. So a product requirements document really tells us why and what it is we're building, what we're doing. You can then kind of keep referring back to it. You can build on it, you can iterate on it, but it's like, probably this is the thing I want to build. And if you ask your AI to start with this, then you can keep coming back to it and you can keep building it. So this is kind of the first stage. This is kind of where you want to start. I'll give you a little bit of an example of what this looks like. And the great thing about sort of chat AI is that you can just go, hey, make me a PRD. And it will know what that is, probably better than you do, and it will give you a really good example of one. So I built, many years ago, I built a Scrabble scorekeeper in AngularJS. And on one particular occasion, we went in to meet with V0, Vassell's AI company. And I was like, oh, I really need to try their product for actually meet them. So I said to Gemini, can you write me a PRD for this Scrabble scorekeeper? This was the prompt I used, and it generated me a couple of hundred lines worth of markdown file, which delved into what it is that I'd be doing. And it extrapolated a lot. It worked out a lot of stuff. To be honest, because I was just trying to try out V0 after I generated this, I didn't really care too much. But it did a pretty good job. So this is a great way to get yourself up and running with a PRD. And what's in it? So you might have metadata, you don't need to, but you want your goals for your app, what success looks like, who's it aimed at, what are they going to be doing, user stories, probably a lot of you use if you're doing sort of development or product work. And we've got scope goals, lots and lots of stuff goes into it. But as I say, Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever you're using, is going to do a really good job of creating this. And you have to read it through, you have to go like, yeah, I think that's kind of what I mean. What is this? So this particular duck, you kind of end up in a certain point. So you'll feed your PRD into, in this case, V0, and it'll do great up to a point. It can build the application, but you then end up in a state where you've got something that's built, and you need to then start talking to it again to get the extra features that you want. So you've solved the problem of context drift, because you can get it to actually refer back to the PRD, but you're still going to have these other issues that we have to provide code. So here's basically where I ended up with in V0, and you'll see I had the kind of little double letter thingy-bob, and I said to it, hey, I want to make this into a component because I want to do the styling and I want it to be reused. And it built it, but it built it over here, and then it didn't use the same component over here. And I was like, well, that's not maintainable, that's not scalable. I can't use this as a developer. I can't use my developer thinking. I'd have to explain to it twice what to do, and it was not how I like to work. So that's where you kind of end up with if you just use your PRD. So how do we fix that? So we use specification-driven development. Has anyone actually heard that phrase before this evening? No? Okay, interesting. One in the back, nice. So we can use this to keep reminding our AI of what it is that we're doing and where we're going. So all of these points that I've made on this slide are very salient. You can basically keep the AI on the rails using this. We're keeping referring back to a spec, and we're breaking it down so that we have sort of smaller slices that we can keep referring the AI back to. Okay, this will make more sense in a second. So the core principles is yours. You've got to keep looking at it. You've got to keep reviewing. Every time you generate a new spec, you're going to talk to the AI, you're going to generate it, and then you're going to look at it again. You want loads of tests. You definitely want loads of tests. This is the only way of making sure you don't go wandering off and break something you previously built. Smaller tasks. In exactly the same way as in a development team, you'll want to break down a large feature story into small chunks that you can execute quite easily, test quite easily, and ship without breaking your entire application. You want to slice down your features for your actual specification. And also, all of the other things that we've learned over the 20 odd years of software development, as the sort of professions grown up, still apply. You still want to pair with people, you still want to review code, you still want to do all the good stuff. The other thing that AI kind of does, or what likes in these tools, is when you're using, say, Copilot, you might be using Cursor, you might be using Claude, is if you kind of go in without any groundwork for what it is that you're trying to do from a kind of a technical point of view, from a standards, from even naming conventions, it likes to generate that. And quite a lot of these coding tools, they've got now ways that they sort of encourage this. So now in I think as I compiled it the other day, it says, oh, I don't actually know anything about this particular project. Do you want to create like an instructions file for this? And you'll do that and it'll look through your project and generate like a kind of Copilot instructions, cursor rules, they're called different things, but it's the base file that says, I'm going to be building a Next.js application, you're going to be using components in React, I like naming my components in British English, but you're going to code in American because that's just how it works. And as I say, Claude encourages this. So you'll see that Claude's got like a init here that it sort of says, hey, and it'll go off and look at your project and it'll sort of come up with a file that says, this is kind of what you want to do. It also has a plan mode, as does the new Google Anti-Gravity, where it sort of tries to think about what it is it wants to do before it does it. So you'll say, hey, do this, and it'll go like, all right, well, I think that's going to be like 4 steps, and are you okay with that? And you say, yeah, and then it'll go off and do it. So this is a way of manually kind of fulfilling some of those things, and as these companies kind of work out that specs are the way to go, you'll be encouraged to do this more. And you might not think about it, but underlying it, it's all about making sure that you've got those kind of rules under the hood so it knows where it's going. So in my team, the product list page of John Lewis, we did an experiment and we came up with 4 challenges where we said, hey, we want you to do this thing. And we said to the AI, go ahead and do it. And we opened up 4 pull requests and we got the team to review them to see how well it did. One of the pull requests for each of these challenges, we did 2. One of them was without any warming up cursor Copilot instructions-y thing, and the other one was with. And basically it worked. It was good. It was 34% more effective, something like that. So just from that little test, you can see that taking one aspect of a spec, which was just the technical requirements, had, from our team's point of view, increased the quality of it. So here is some different levels of specs that you can actually sort of go ahead and implement. So you've got your PRD, which says, hey, top level, what am I building? Once you've got that, and you say, I want to build a Scrabble scorekeeper. If you then want to delve into, I want the double, triple, whatever score component, you then actually say to it, could you write me a spec for the double, triple, whatever letter component? And by giving it that in, say, Gemini ChatGPT, even in your chat window of your IDE, it will generate a feature spec that can live alongside your project. And then you sort of then say, all right, cool, just go ahead and implement that. And then you'll sort of move through into actually kind of building the thing. So that one, what was that? So that was a new project, brand new project, we've got PRD. But if you're actually applying this to your existing project, it's slightly different, but it's the same. So you'll have maybe your requirements. So you've got, say, on the product list page, we've already got a page on the John Lewis website that you can look at beds or clothes or whatever it is you're buying. And we want to create a new feature of this. So we've got requirements. We say we want to create a horizontal navigation instead of a left-hand navigation, and we want it to have drop-downs, do different things than the current one does. So we'll feed that in. We then generate a contextual prompt. And this is where we say, all right, take our requirements, and in your IDE alongside your code, you'll say to it, using what you know about the code and these requirements, write me a specification that fulfills those requirements. And this is a spec tied very closely to your code. And you can read that through as a developer or a non-developer, and you can say, yeah, actually that is kind of the approach I would take, that's what I want to do. Or you can say, you know what, that's not right at all, and you can rewrite it, you can iterate on it, you can ask it to go back and like try again. So here's the contextual prompt. Briefly, we've got a little sort of template here that I've sort of put into Copilot. And when I get it to run this, I just type sort of /spec, and then I'll copy and paste the Jira ticket in, and it will put the description and the ticket number here. It will run this through Copilot, and it will generate a spec for that feature. And this is hugely powerful. This is really where I was like, you know what, we could probably actually start coding with AI without worrying that it's just going to be rubbish all the time. We then, from that, generate our specification document, and I've also, in the prompt that you just saw, I added an extra line that said if it looks like it takes more than data complete, if it's more than 5 files, it's higher than a 3 in complexity on the Fibonacci scale. Don't worry about that if you've not come across that in terms of user stories before or task breakdown, but you know, it's there. Break it down, label it, describe the subtasks, and then we'll attack each of those individually. And this stops the AI from getting bored and wandering off and making a cup of tea and thinking about the pathetic hopelessness of life. So here was a use case for my little Scrabble scorekeeper. I went to Slovenia with my wife, and we bought this, and we didn't realize until after we bought it that it was in Slovenia. We probably should have worked it out from the cover, but you know, we were in a foreign country, everything was in foreign. And the alphabet looks a bit different than English. So actually I was able to use my Scrabble scorekeeper to allow us to score English words very easily using a foreign deck of cards, which was cool. And the Scrabble card game, I don't know, it's all right. It's all right if you're thinking about playing it, it's okay, it's fine. So one of the things I did spot is that when you lay multiple words across from each other, I had not built that wasn't supported yet. So here's an example of creating your contextual prompt, but for that particular feature. So the player lays the word, it creates 2 new words, and then also the breakdown bits on. And then here's the spec'd outputs. We've got multiple subtasks, we've got the sort of overview of the feature, we've got user stories, and then it also did with things like success metrics and user adoption, and that's not stuff I actually needed. I was quite happy to just delete that and let it sort of carry on with its day. But just sort of reiterating that you do need to review it and make sure that it's still going to kind of do what you want to, because it gets carried away. It likes overperforming, which is fine. So we've got a lot of stuff. Here we go to the code. When I actually then ran this through the code, I probably hadn't read it through sort of carefully enough, and it did go off on a bit of a tangent. But if it does that, you can easily correct. You can say, you know what, you made a mistake here. Can you amend that in the spec, undo the changes you made, and then try again? Or you can change the files yourself, or change the spec yourself, but you'll have to tell the AI that you've done so. And that's the only caveat here. It kind of, if you don't tell it that you've intervened, it will assume that everything's just as it left it, which, not great. So, here's a summary. Everything's a spec. From your very top level document describes what your product is, down to individual features, subtasks, all of the steps you would take to break down and build software, you do beforehand using a spec, and you say, use this to build this. We love markdown files, it works. Review it, definitely. This is not prescriptive. My team on the PLP, some of them use bits of it, some of them don't use it at all. Sometimes you want to sort of just get the job done and just say, oh, I've got an error, copy paste the error, go and do it. You don't have to use this for everything. This is really for like feature work or building a new product, anything where it's a multi-step process, it's a bit complicated, and you yourself would probably get confused, which means that the AI definitely will. Also important to note that it's got nothing to do with ducks. So thank you very much. On my website, I have got like a bit of a brief sort of write-up of this, which does include also some pictures of ducks. if you want to look at Pitch Stacks. But yeah, that is basically Spec Driven Development. Thanks. Do we have any questions?
We definitely have. We have about 15 minutes for us to ask questions to Riley before we move on to Sean. So three, guys, one by one.
The way you described it, so like,
Yeah, I can do. The way you described it, like all the specifications, all the details, etc., it's super rare in the company, in the development company, to have these even for normal developers, even not for AI. And I've seen it. I've been working with a few of the companies last time, and I've seen it maybe one time only, where we have very detailed specifications made by separate people who research the real world, how the things work in the real world, and they describe these, and we do it iteratively. So developers make some assumptions, so they found some problems, then guy goes research a bit more, returns with a fixed specification, etc. That's a good thing. That's AI will work, definitely. But that's super rare, to be honest. And I rarely see developers even try to write specifications like that. Do you think it's even real? So how many people will follow this?
So in my team at John Lewis, we do have a business analyst, and Jira tickets are meant to be fleshed out with the spec of the thing that we're going to be building. But real world, right? So there are always gaps. Our analyst may be new to the team or on holiday, and so the developers need to sometimes flesh it out. Sometimes there's a bit of backwards and forwards. The developer's done design, the design's done design. Developers look at it, go like, no, it's rubbish. It goes back. The beauty of this is that it's not a long process. Like, you'll leave it to churn away and generate the contextual prompt, and it may take it 5 minutes to output it, and it may take you then 10 minutes to read it, but you've got much higher level of understanding of what it is that you're doing than if you just looked at the Jira and then tried to work out where in the code it was going to go. Because it's doing it based on the code, it will say to you, you know what, you're doing this horizontal nav thing, you're going to want to make changes in these few files. So it's doing that bit of background work that you would do yourself and looking through the code base and trying to work out how that ticket falls in with the real world of code. So whether or not people follow it, that's totally up to them. But the big AI companies are very much advocating for this approach to writing code because it does produce better results. And whether or not you know it, whether or not you're going to be aware of it, this is what's going to be happening in the model in the background more and more, in my view, and in some of the tooling that we've seen kind of crop up.
One more comment on this. I've seen this working probably in the established teams, in the established requirements. Good. But on the early stages of the startups, or early stages of the projects where requirements change, like how that writing too much specifications in the beginning slows down, really slows down. Developers write code and change code much faster than specifications. Mm-hmm. And after some time, when the code matures, then we start to add specifications. Mm-hmm.
So, some chap wearing a scarf from OpenAI was giving a chat about specs and how that was going to turn into the sort of the future of development. And he was very much advocating for having a spec document, a PRD, and use that to rebuild the code base completely from scratch every time you you want to make a change. You update the spec, you run it, and it rebuilds the whole thing. I would see that as hugely wasteful and dangerous because you have to maintain your tests alongside it. You have to make sure the tests run every time. You're burning through a bunch of AI credits when you don't really need to because all your files are already created, right? So I'm not necessarily suggesting those specs are long-lived. In fact, in my team, I generate a spec, and then when the job is done, that can be deleted because the requirements are documented in testing, commenting the code where absolutely necessary. AI loves putting them in, but I love stripping them out. So if you've named all your variables correctly and you've got tests that reinforce that logic, you don't need the spec anymore. It's really just so that it's like kind of asking a developer friend, like, is my understanding of this correct? But you're getting it to sort of say what it thinks the task is. You're reading and going like, yeah, go and do that now. And the sort of level of completion for those tasks is much higher. It can do a better job once it's got that spec. Does that sort of make sense? Work?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Thank you for our presentation. Never heard about this methodology. Very interesting. The question is, when an agent works, it usually deals with context window. As far as I understand, Markdown files specification are located on your file on your system drive. How do you move Markdown into context window?
So once you've generated your contextual prompt, you say to the AI, look at this file, implement this task or the first part of this or however far you want to go. It uses that markdown as its context. And then if it does a bad job, you can just close down that particular chat window and you can start another one. Because you've maintained your context in a separate file, you're not reliant on correcting it. And if it does this context drift, you can then just go like, no, you don't have to try and sort of convince it to do the right thing. You're like, no, hang on. I'll update the spec, now try again. And from there, it's got a better sense of what it's trying to achieve than if you've just got a long-lived contextual window.
So the main idea is chats. One chat is one context. Many chats, many contexts. The next year we will deal with agents who will work with each other instead of programmers. We will have IT managers as AI agents, programmers, analytics, and so on. And the problem we have to solve is to divide our context. For example, AI manager have its own context. We have to divide something and give it to the programmer AI agent, number one. Is this methodology allows this approach?
Yes, but at this stage in our kind of AI life cycle, I would still suggest that we want to be reviewing everything at every stage. It was only just today, somebody had their entire hard drive deleted by Google Anti-Gravity, because that's what it wants to do. You know, you say like, oh, clear my cache, and it just deletes the hard drive. Cool. But if you review the output at every stage and, you know, just send it completely into auto mode, you get a chance to course correct. And when we get to full agents, chat to agents, and, you know, the stack of agent stuff, we are going to have to be really sure that it's not going to wander off and do things that we're not expecting it to. So you're going to probably end up with a master context spec that you're going to keep referring back to, and you're like, just make sure you don't delete my hard drive, please, if that's okay. I think. But like that will be a completely different model for working as well. Like, it's hard to predict.
Thank you for very good presentation, very sharing customer times. I have two questions for you. So first, in your work, how impactful this usage of AI in terms of your backlog and did things speed up, and how you can measure it if you can share some KPIs or numbers was absolutely fantastic. And another thing is when you have already developed projects, can you reverse engineer, so say, to AI, okay, review my code and build back all documents needed, and then you correct them in the way you want it for project to progress, and then feed it back into I have tried it. Thank you.
Okay. So the first one, I'm not really the KPI guy. I just sort of build stuff. But we've got different levels of uptake within the team. So I'm kind of almost all in, but then sometimes I'll just sort of, I'm actually going to code today. I'm actually going to do some work myself. And it's good to have that balance. One of the criticisms of coding with AI is that you sort of got different focuses. You might be working on multiple things at the same time, and it's then actually quite hard to kind of get your brain into that kind of deep workflow, all that stuff that you need to do. Yeah, absolutely. So you need to kind of work out ways of dealing with that, and certainly one of the ways that I've kind of conquered being able to do deep work with this method is by actually just like reading the sort of AI output. It's in agent mode, so it's going to keep sort of iterating and doing stuff, but you're reviewing files as it goes, so you are up to date with its thinking, you're following along. It's like pair programming, but much faster, and you've got to try and keep up. But yeah, it's usually fast. Like I had one this morning. We had a Renovate, which is like a little bot that updates packages in your NPM package manager. It had updated something by 2 major versions. So one of our tests stopped working. So I was like, I'm going to have to look at the change log for this particular thing. I'm going to have to look at it was a contract test. I'm going to have to look at contract tests, understand those, see what's going on. And what I did was I pasted in the error, in this case, which was our context for what we're going on here, and I explained to it, hey, we've updated by 2 major versions, what can you do? And it fixed it much faster. And it's those kind of things, like it is grunt work, that kind of issue, but it's something that would take a human a lot longer to work out than a machine in this case. And there are things that humans do well, and there are things that machines do well, and I think this method just kind of splits the difference and kind of tries to bring us like, oh, I can do some complicated thinking, sometimes funky, and the AI likes doing simple stuff. How do I get us onto a page where we're both doing something that's in our wheelhouse? And the other question was,
you have already built a project, and can you say to AI, okay, that's project, can you build all these documents?
yeah, I've done that particular app. I've sort of had things that I've built over the years and said, hey, write me the specification for this, and then when I want to build a new feature, use that as a Bible, create a new feature spec using the stuff about the database structure and the standards for coding and the fact that the testing everything's extremely well done. Refer back to that document, use those things, and then build your new feature. So yes, you can. It's easy. You just have to go write me my PRD or my spec based on what you see in the code, and it loves doing that. Yeah.
I believe that's the answer to the question about that's in real world some projects are just liking this kind of specs and documents.
Yeah. And whether you need the specs or not, it's totally up to you as a developer, as a team. If you want to keep them around, commit them to your code base. Cool. If you don't, that's fine. You can regenerate them very easily.
Thank you.
Do we have one more question?
Yeah, thank you so very much for this presentation. This is really cool use case of just using something that helps you day-to-day. My question is around implementing AI tools, especially enterprise-wise, not an easy task. And my question would be around how did you convince or rather what kind of compromise did you have to hit with the head of compliance/governance, or like whoever would be vetoing or eyeing the whole solution?
So we use Copilot, and it was, well, he's sort of the head of back-end development, so above me and across. He was very much responsible for getting that through, putting the trials in place, making sure that it was all locked down, that nobody then is using like the public versions. So lots and lots of hoops to jump through. Thankfully, it wasn't my role, but now we've got it, then yeah, it's great. But we're now looking at do we get access to the command line version of Copilot, and how do we do that? And so then we've got to go through the whole process again. John Lewis is a huge old company, and making change is tricky. So yeah, I don't envy his job, but like we've got it and we're using it. And I'm very happy we are.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we have to, give the stage to Sean.
We can do one more.
Yeah, okay, cool.
We did the change for our DJ.
Yeah, presentation. The question is, what sort of tech stack are you using for this project in GenRouge? And are there any the legacy frameworks where you know that this cannot be applied?
So this particular project is a Next.js, and that's specifically because we need the server-side rendering, we want it all SEO and nice. In terms of what it wouldn't work for, I don't think there's much. I think if you've got something super legacy that the AI has never seen, so been trained on whatever, then it'd be tricky. One of our sort of other teams in Waitrose, because we're all part of the Cat family, they had a project in Lotus Notes. And they wanted to bring that back to life, back into the real world. It had been living somewhere on a server for maybe a decade, and everybody was scared to update it and do anything with it. Like, it was full of bugs, but just nobody wanted to touch it. So they went through and they asked it for different components, high level, they inputted screen grabs, and they said, write us specs for each of these features. And their approach was a lot more iterative than this. They were like, write me a spec. No, that's not quite right. Tear it down, write it again, but bear this in mind. Whereas I'm kind of advocating more for like, read it and edit it and sort of make it your own. They were like, no, we want to make it one shot every time from this spec. So once I've got the spec, build the feature. If you can't build it in one go, don't bother, I'll write a different spec. So it's possible for all sorts of weird old tech.
And another hopefully last question is, do you have some sort of challenge of synchronizing the Jira tickets?
With quantitative empty files.
So if the contextual prompt actually comes up with any surprises, it's our job as devs to update that in the ticket. We do sometimes slice down tickets if they get a bit ungainly. You're like, oh, well, you give me a ticket here that covers 3 features, not 1. And so you might break down. And that's kind of just about, Jira hygiene and making sure that everything is kind of what we expect it. So nothing that different than what we do normally, but it's a manual job. There are MCP server thingy bobs that you could do with Jira, but it never works at the moment. Cool, that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Let's give a round of applause to Ronnie. Thank you.
Lotus Notes. Who's used Lotus Notes? Lotus, yeah. That was a surprising thing to hear in a presentation about AI. Lotus Notes. Добрый вечер, меня зовут Sean. Уток не будет. My name's Sean. There will be no ducks in this presentation, but I do speak some Russian. And I want to tell you 5 surprising things that I learned helping 300 software developers working across different stacks, different companies, different interests and comfort with AI start to adopt this. This is the we are a serious company with serious customers slide. So we're a full service software development company. And obviously, if you're a software development consultancy, AI is probably quite existential, which is basically why I joined the company. I'm not a software engineer by background, but I've learned enough over time to be dangerous, right? And now very dangerous thanks to AI. But I joined a couple of years ago, Devon, because they said, look, we need to tell our customers how to take advantage of this, because if we don't, someone else will. They won't need us anymore. But let's start with a little thought experiment. Anyone want to guess when that was said? What year? 60s? Any other guesses? Slightly more recent than that.
2000.
2000s, 90s. So this is a famous American economist. When computers started being introduced to different workflows, it took a really long time. It took much longer than this to see any actual aggregate improvement in productivity. There's a couple of things. It takes a long time for real productivity to actually be measurable. But also, some of you may have used computers before they were networked together. And the first thing people did when they could send a lot more memos was write a lot more memos and print them out and put them in inboxes and outboxes, which is why email still has inbox and outbox, even though many of us won't ever use that concept. Another one. Programming will remain very difficult because once we've freed ourselves from the circumstantial cumbersomeness, we will find ourselves free to tackle the problems that are now well beyond our programming capability.
Elon Musk?
Good one.
Alan Turing.
Alan Turing. If we sort of split the difference, we get Edgar Dijkstra, who thought about this a lot. Okay, so if you're afraid, panicking, excited, feeling full of wonder, people before us had to go through way harder stuff. They had to go from assembly and computers filling rooms to making it valuable. Right? We have been thinking about this stuff for a little bit of time. And but it's still super confusing, right? And it's kind of my job to explain this to CTOs and development teams and CEOs. I went to a conference, they said I could 10x my development with AI. Why can't I get the features that I want, pushing a button? Because if you look out there, the messages, the different things people are saying about the value they're getting from AI, it's very, very confusing. So extremely simple model. I'm somewhere on that line, right? But let's say among the people who don't have really any kind of software background, there's a bunch of really cool things people are building. I know a bunch of these people, 1 or 2 person startups, solving their own problem. They know the problem inside out. They've never found a product that could do it. And AI is doing something to lower the cost of them building stuff, but it's like the person who is an expert and is building the thing to solve their own problem. I know one person who specializes in survey research, right? And if you want to do survey research properly online, it's like Qualtrics is like $5,000 a year, or it's SurveyMonkey. And if you're doing serious research and you send someone to the site SurveyMonkey, right, it's a little bit interesting. But there's also people who are telling us how they're not really creating value, right? So there's lots of people talking about how, my whole startup was destroyed because Google Anti-Gravity or something deleted my whole hard drive, right? So there's also people without any software background who've never done it kind of properly, who get super surprised when this generation thing generates tokens that have poor consequences. And there's a lot of people that are not posting stuff on LinkedIn, are not here, are dark matter, right? And some of them could be the new generation of citizen developer, and some of them could be stuck in spreadsheets. We would never know because they don't, below this line is sort of invisible to us, right? So that's just the variety of messages that I see on the non-software developer background side. On the right-hand side, you see a lot of people who did cool stuff. You mentioned pair programming, like how you really build great software with kind of a whole bunch of people had a bunch of parallel learnings in the 1990s. they collected them into something called the Agile Manifesto, and we've been destroying it ever since. Or they're selling something like, I'm selling an AI for developer tool, I'm selling this, or like me, I'm selling a software consultancy that's really, the people who are going to show you numbers and value and KPIs, they're probably selling something, or maybe they have super deep expertise. This is quite confusing though, because there's a lot of the people also from the 1990s saying this is the end of the earth, this is destroying, like this is the end of everything, this is the end of software development as a craft, how will people learn, how will people gain, all of which are fantastic questions. And then some of those people are selling something else, which is like, you need to do testing my old way, and my knowledge is from pre-GPT era, so therefore something else. So when you see people who used to sort of agree, and now they are saying it's the end of the world versus a great new dawn, if you know something about software, it's confusing. How can we expect CEOs and customers to know? But then also, below the line, another bunch of people that we don't see out there talking. Maybe you know some people, maybe you are some of these people, not using it at all, but we would never know because they're not talking about it, or just like getting on with it, which is like a ton of people at JLP by the sounds of it. Riley's good enough to come here and get above the line and show us value, right? But there's lots of people that might be using it, but they're not talking about it. So how would we know? So it's extremely confusing. And I'm going to phrase the rest of what I say around these kind of 5 questions, which things, so not all of them surprise me completely, but maybe they are surprising to you. The takeaways are already there. It's about more than code completion, right? It's about rethinking how we put humans and artifacts, being tickets, code, tests, documents that we actually really fascinatingly throw away because we don't want to have to maintain yet another thing. Right, I'll get to that as well. And the one thing I'll come back to Riley for at the right point is to ask you about other data that you could put in there. But the last one is like, adoption is highly personal. You can have people who you would think that the same kind of experience level, ways of working, but a lot of comfort with working with AI is like deeply psychological, actually, and comfort with uncertainty and handling all of that. So our journey, when I arrived, there was lots of like people trying everything, like every possible tool. Everyone was confused. Some people were afraid. Last year, it was like, how do we do experiments in actual work? Put some numbers on it and start to say, we will use it for these things and not use it for these things. This year has been about pushing it into, where do you get value, different parts of the SDLC. And for us, we already started working on agents, but for us next year, it's about how do we bring that kind of vision to life where a consultant works with also a bunch of agents. So I had some expectations that adoption would be sort of correlated with experience, and that older people would know everything and they wouldn't need to adopt it, and the younger people, they don't know anything, so they just accept all of the answers. And I was super surprised that, yes, young people just go accept. It's not quite true either. But I had some experience, that's why I asked Riley the question before. A lot of people quite deep into software engineering feel that these technologies are things that they have been waiting for 10 or 20 or 30 years. And so then on my own experience, more on the data and AI side of things, if I could just send what we have now back 5, 10, 15 years, I would save like sometimes years of my working life, right? Which would have been valuable to me if I had a time machine. The group that I found the biggest resistance for is people kind of in the middle who got where they are the old way. Now the young people are chasing up behind them. Meanwhile, they never quite master. So they don't see it as this kind of final dawn of tools that I can use. And so they feel very threatened, and I understand why. And along the way, I found some anti-patterns. Right? So some people say, well, someone else is going to check it, so I might as well accept it. It takes me longer to correct AI output than to do it myself. Again, you heard Riley say, but what are you using AI to do it for? If you could do it better and faster, why is that the thing you're choosing AI to do? And a lot of the anti-AI or completely anti-AI rhetoric in the SDLC is, well, it can't do X, Y, Z. Don't do it for that if you're great. Like, think of something else, and if there's nothing else, don't use it. No one's forcing you to use it at all. And then one of my favorites is, we solved this years ago. You just have to get the right requirements, written down in the right spec, and then a human can do it, just like in AI. But, sometimes people don't know what they want until we show them. Sometimes there's already an existing system that was never documented or it's in Lotus Notes, and we didn't make those choices. Now we have to live with them. We can actually take those patterns, and AI has learned those patterns and can actually help increase our knowledge and certainty about what the hell we're trying to do. So this mindset is interesting because many people get into software development not to embrace uncertainty, imperfection, and change. For me, like as a data person, an operational person, a prediction person my whole career, yeah, all data is crap. You have no idea where it came from. Someone wants you to make some predictions. They put it in something like a Databricks, great product that I've used a lot, but you have to be comfortable with those things. But a lot of people didn't get into software development to have things change on them all the time, right? I don't think that's too shocking. So you've got to help people get excited about that. And we have a lot of cultural programming, right? It says AI is the same thing as automation, right? And if we go down that track, the quality bar goes up. Everyone's antibodies get activated, and it's like, we just ask this thing to do way too complicated stuff, and then it doesn't work, and we get, pointless. And it takes a lot of work. So I do a lot of work with like C-suites on just this, just deprogramming business people from this thing, because actually it's like whatever the latest tech wave was, they thought of automation so they could get rid of a whole bunch of people, right? When they realize that it can make people better and lead to upside and new ways of doing things, which will change jobs. Right? I'm not someone who says, it will only augment people and there'll only be new jobs and new value. No. Like my job has already changed in 2 years, right? To the level that, is surprising to me. So if you're looking how to convince teammates, if you're trying to help other teams work with you better with this tech, if you're trying to convince bosses to give you access to tech, go down the right-hand path, right? Be a little bit less hypey and try to break that cultural programming. But we've been obsessed with automating ourselves for like thousands of years. Right? That's where the Greek word automaton comes from. Yeah, so it's just about, you don't need to get superpowers from this thing, but if you have new powers or it enhances your existing powers, that's the key. And that exists for every person working with code, but it might be different for every person. Okay, data. We're in Databricks, so we're going to talk about data, but I love data anyway. I still meet software teams, including teams in our own organization, who, I say, you've been logging how the software works, right? So you've got data on which you could train AI agents or AI algorithms to predict the performance of the data, and they say, well, logging is expensive. So we sort of turned it off. We just use it for when there's a problem with the software, we go Control F, Control C, Control V, Alt Tab, Control C, and I've seen incredibly talented developers say, this is how I diagnose bugs. I follow a string through a bunch of text files. Like even I know, as a non-engineer, how to change that. And there's lots of excuses that we use. Oh, I don't have prod access. So how would I get that data? And the biggest thing, I think you, Sergey, asked, what about when we don't have the information on what we should build or how we should change it? It is there in your customer's feedback, but that's in a Lotus Notes, that's in the Lotus Notes help desk application, and it never reaches the developers. So for me, as a data person, for my PhD, I studied corruption in Russian public procurement using the Gossakubki dataset from 2011 to 2013. Not something I would do right now. So the things I had to do to get data were, I'm very used to, I have a crazy question, where will I find the data? Okay, software is like non-physical products, it's all data. So I think software teams really need to up their game on what they measure about how their software performs, not just observability and costs, but where do users get stuck on a happy flow? Like this is 2025. It's like really easy to measure this stuff. It's hard to do something with it, but there's a lot that missing data. You could go out and talk to users, and you should, but you can also just track a few clicks and also see where they get stuck, what they're looking for. So there's a lot of data going to waste. This is a technical audience, so we don't need to cover what AI actually is, but it just makes predictions. Right? We put something in, something happens, and something comes out. Riley's covered it already. And the counterintuitive thing, again, going back to uncertainty and change, the data about when things went wrong is more useful than the data about when things went right. If you follow best practice and you have 10,000 successful deployments, the last one of those observations is not super useful. I mean, don't turn it off. But the ways that things go wrong are much more informative in terms of signal about where you can go. And that's the signal that is often locked away in human language, right? When people give a project update, but they use certain words that they didn't use last time, if we're really listening as humans, as product people, then we can detect that. And the great thing about LLMs just as a tool, if you asked me 5 years ago, sure, you're a data person, how do we use that data to improve our software products? I would say, I hope you've got a research team and blah, 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 because words are difficult. LLMs make this stuff so easy if you want to listen to the voice of the customer, right? Listen to the voice, if you like, a platform team, and your customers are other development teams. There is so much feedback available in Slack, in help desk tickets, in retrospectives, that again, people are just sitting on it, and LLMs lower the cost of using that signal to do interesting things. So this is already sort of, I'm sure, out of date, but everyone's getting on with this stuff. So in American, that's called table stakes. But if we actually want agents to do anything interesting, it's all about the data we can get on the right-hand side. So if we want a fleet of agents to develop software or help Riley develop software, we have to get more of that ops data and that feedback cycle feeding back into development. Otherwise, we're going to be kind of disappointed, I think. They're just going to do your thing really quick, but without the human review, they're going to drive off the cliff, and they're not going to know about it. So that's my call to everyone. Please think about what data you are not using to improve your development process. We could wait for some mystical BA to come down and tell us the truth, or we can try and infer some directions from the data we already have. Already been covered, so I can skip it. Most software in the world already exists, so it's about maintenance and iteration, not creating new. The funny thing is, these tools are super good at creating impressive stuff completely new, but unless you're doing spec-driven development and actually thinking about how these things interact, trying to change it afterwards is extremely frustrating. And this is again where legacy and all that extra information, I wasn't sure how you were going to answer the point about how to use the existence of existing software, and I think it's really cool to say what would have been the spec that created this, use that as a starting point, and iterate from there. Again, it's all there. So legacy is a real pain, but it also means data, information, signals about what worked. I won't do that. So yeah, we started doing some experiments to try and put some numbers on this a little over a year ago, and we found, I'll show you the specific numbers, in a pure greenfield setting, yeah, I mean, some of the marketing is true. Pure greenfield, like totally new product, totally new features. And when you get into real work, whoa, some things are 10 times faster, but only some small things. Now, if the thing that's 10 times faster was an important thing that was blocking you, great. But some of the things that block us are more robust to this. So the experiment we did on the greenfield side, we took like a brand new team that wasn't experienced in our ways of working, had them build some software. It took about 120 hours. And then we took two like high performance teams, so experienced teams who've worked together in agile software development a lot. And we said to the left team, you can't use any AI. And we said to the right team, use everything you can possibly find. And yeah, maybe it's twice as fast. But for me, observing it, the more interesting thing was how it changed the ways that the team worked. So when the requirements are richer in the way Riley has advocated, all of the teams can start working on stuff immediately, because what needs to be tested, what the infrastructure requirements are, what the front end, what the back end are all supposed to be doing, is all much more known up front. And so the big thing that slows development teams down is not typing code. That was never the slow thing. It was waiting on other people to do stuff that we depend upon, right? And so that was really cool. But if you've done this across many teams, if your software team loves waiting on other people to do stuff, they're not going to see much benefit there. And so the first things we took it to were old problems, like we have long been fans of automated testing, but then, now we're going to maintain all these automated tests. And it was a big moment for me when an LLM updated automated tests of a front end, not with 90, 99, but 100% accuracy. Now, when a human looks at it, it's not that impressive. Just move some locators around, change some field names. But to Riley's point about grunt work, where machines are strictly better at that kind of stuff, that was like, okay, that's cool. So the barriers to doing more automated testing are coming down because the maintainability of automated tests can increase. So we now look for like 2 for 1. Like for every good test that you write, you should be aiming to get another good test. Again, not covering your code with obsolete unit tests, but and that's quite useful. Again, it's not 10x, right, but it leads to better quality software. So AI creates value where that high signal data actually changes what you would otherwise do. So, the one of the moment is every tool says $20 for 20% gain. And then really clever CFOs go, if I get 5 of those right, then it's 100%. And I can get rid of all of the developers in those to multiply. And so many customers of ours, some of those very big logos, are like, well, CFO, they paid for GitHub Copilot for 100, 1,000 people. Where is my... Why doesn't it happen? Part of it is that we have mostly been thinking as techies about automating other people's jobs, right? And that was quite comfortable for a long time. And now the mirror is sort of turning a very bright light onto us, which is really scary. If you were used to changing other people's job or protecting your own, and then you go, now it can happen to me. You come up with all kinds of exotic ways why your thing is special and different. And you've industrialized everyone else's work, but our thing needs to remain about the soul and about the craft. And it does, right? But there's a little bit of irony there. So to shortcut that one, look, it's always difficult for humans to work together. We've had that problem for quite some time. Unless we think about it carefully and experiment, AI is not going to magically make us work better together. The output of a team is a function of how well the team works together. And if every individual is 100% faster in their own way, they might just run off in all different directions. Right? And that's why the CFO is I think the CEO question is, we've been digitally transforming for 1 or 2 decades now. Surely AI is the last wave and we'll be done after this, and we can go back to, or go on to something else. We're not the same Devin as D-E-V-I-N, Devon. But back to Dijkstra's point, like every decade, software developers, software development, software as a craft is obsolete. People said it's exactly the same things. If you go and look at 2010s, 2000s, 1990s, 1980s, 1970s, the same conversation that we're having now on LinkedIn, for 6 or 7 different kinds of message. And I said, why are we still here? At least for the moment, software doesn't exist for its own sake. Right? It exists to scale some human outcome. If you're not working on that, either you're working on AGI or go and find some other software to develop. So don't measure this stuff by the amount of code you generate. It's a code generating fire hose. So we can just get anyone on the street and just say, here's my laptop, make some code. Right? It knows how to do it. Riley, you referred to overproduction as kind of baked into the whole thing. It's a token generating machine. That's its only thing that it exists to do. Inputs, right? The number of agents that we have, yeah. More than 0 is good, but if you've got 100 agents, you can have a lot of time making those agents operate. Right? Cost, getting rid of people is something that people really want to do all the time. I understand why. But saying that because of AI we did this, I mean, people are now using AI to cover getting rid of people for other reasons, and they will eventually realize they can do the same thing if it starts working. Firing people who know things about how software works is going to turn out to be, tomorrow or in a few months' time, a really bad idea as the tidal wave of vibe-coded stuff just breaks over. And there are already people claiming that they're making a great living, making much more money than they used to, cleaning out other people's vibe-coded messes. Right? And noise, right? So magic wand icons, all of that stuff is, we're not going to measure have we transformed yet by any of that. I do just go back to 4 very simple statements. Does a tool help us? Not obsessed about tools and processes, but talk to humans, customers, colleagues, and interact with them to understand what matters to them. Cool. That's a tool that helps us get better at what we do. Does it help us make more working software? The cool thing here is you can get quite comprehensive documentation, so that trade-off of, well, we can either write software or we can write documentation. It's not presentation. These things are synonymous if you choose to do it in an intentional way. Customer collaboration of a contract negotiation, and responding to change or reforming a change. So to me, AI is just the latest test. When we say we're agile, because we work in 2-week sprints, we're not actually sprinting. It's 2-week. You guys dragging the boat up the Volga riverbank, right? If we were just bullshitting about that, we're not taking it seriously. But if we can find ways to make teams work better, then we could have a very interesting future. Yeah, so in my view, we will only feel a transformation when it's become part of a new way of working, but that new way of working might be this old 1990s way of working that people realized without any of this stuff. Yeah, and this guy, it's a very long thing, but he's pointing to the fact that this probably will mean teams get smaller. Doesn't mean that there might be fewer teams, but the optimal team size might be smaller, right? If everyone's T skills get amplified by using this, right? If we can get into all that enterprise data and understand how our software works, even if it was Lotus Notes, we may move into a world where teams are 2 to 3 person teams that used to be 4 to 5 person, which has a really interesting implications for how we organize and how we price this thing. If you are a big, massive political science nerd, political economy nerd like me, you go and look at the 20th century, and you find that in the 20th century, half to 80% of the productivity gains from new technology in the 20th century were captured within manufacturing firms. This is why General Electric, Ford, General Motors, this is why those names still exist. How many services firms do we still remember from a very long time ago that weren't a bank? None of them. They all get destroyed. So that 20 pounds a month for a tool, that's the enabler. How you give people time, space to experiment, how you do everything else around it. And the research on the 20th century says that cost is 5 to 10 times larger, which doesn't make me very popular with CFOs. I say, you thought that was a lot of money, and that's not doing anything. If you actually want to change, it's going to be a little bit more complicated. So go beyond code completion, please. That wasn't difficult to start with, right? You have much more useful data about how your software works and behaves than you already appreciate and are using. And if you care about getting the team on board, you have to bring people to this. You're not going to be able to force this on people in a productive way. But people come to this in very different ways, and the kind of light bulb moment for them is really, really different. So if you're involved in adoption and helping other people, like, be patient and think about what matters to them. Okay, I think I'll pause there, stop there. Have we got still time for questions?
Yeah, 100%.
Good. Where's the second mic?
So here. So yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sean.
Hey, Sean. Have you seen any SaaS vendors or products that help get this ops data? You mentioned to gather it, aggregate it in some way. Maybe there's also some kind of standards to aggregate this data.
It would be good, and someone should build that. What I see is that observability became very much, is it running? How is it running? Kind of yes, no. So there's observability vendors, and then there's kind of logging vendors, your Datadog types. If you go to their websites, this is all solved. And I've never found anyone who's solved the business problem. The way I would do it today would be extract that data to a specialist data platform, like a Databricks or others, and then have data people and software people work on that. I think the challenge is the standards that you mentioned don't exist when it comes to how does my software work. So compared to, is it running or not? What's the memory usage? There's a whole bunch of very well agreed, very understandable metrics, but like, are people getting stuck in my product is a highly interpretive thing. So it's not natural necessarily for software people to have to apply that layer of thinking in a different way to interpret the data. But it's being collected, it's just not being aggregated and interpreted in a way that a marketing team would do the same for their data or a sales team would do for their data.
Cool. It's kind of gets me thinking maybe of some kind of unit tests for user analytics.
Yeah. So people on that side of things. So Snowplow is one vendor that I happen to know that was a consultancy that was sick of answering that question. Where do people get stuck in our product along a pathway of clicks? So they built a tool to solve their own consultancy, writing the same thing, and then they realized, oh, we have a product here. So that's a bit more of a plug and play kind of thing, like it's an SDK, but you still have to do some work to define what the behavior would have been through your application. That's not automatic. Whereas, is it running or not? What's the response time? Is sort of too easy to measure.
Yeah. Very good food for thought. Thank you.
Cool. I mean, build it someone. But it will take a combination of skills to do that.
Thank you, Sean. Great observation about AI nautical automation, because I believe we spent a lot of time building automation, and in some areas it's make people's life even worse than it was before.
This XKCD comment, which many of us, myself have included, have automated things that if we got to the end of it, and sometimes we didn't, we realized there's no way I can pay this back. Right? So that's maybe on steroids now.
Yeah, and then I want to hear your opinion how we can improve things moving into AI era, because in your example with manufacturing, we all know that industrializing countries was very big leap in production, and with all promise of automation and that everybody will have, and we now have computers in our pockets, but the increase in productivity not comparable with promise. And the same now with AI. So AI promise us a lot of increased production, but would be with reality. What's your opinion?
I think that people are rediscovering that like it's what you don't put in the product matters just as much. The code you take out, which is a matter of craft and judgment. And software, is a complex product, right? Even just even the Scrabble, think about all the things happening underneath. Whatever level of abstraction you're writing at, the number of things, like if you tried to create an analog for a physical product like that, it would be incredibly complex and incredibly expensive. So we have got used to, fine-tune our process for continuous manufacturing. You can churn out a lot of boots or butter or anything. Ultimately, they're quite simple processes that humans have known how to make boots and butter for hundreds of years. Software is quite new. And then the other thing is that in all those other ways, people have tried to make software, a given piece of software more similar to the last piece of software, which I think, have standards and libraries and repeating patterns. And that, AI as a pattern recognition repetition machine takes that away, right? So you can produce code now. Anyone can, to get to the starting line faster. But Nick Gorman, who's someone that I follow, he wrote a great series, 20 posts on his exploration as someone who teaches software craftspersonship. And he said, it's really easy to start a marathon. Right? And it's really easy to start a marathon running too fast. But to have a product that scales and you can sell the product or you can sell the company that makes the product is a whole other thing. So right now, we can all go and create 20 startups in 20 minutes from the face value kind of view. But the production, what we've been producing software to do has been to help some humans achieve some aim, which is quite abstract compared to more boots and more butter.
Yeah, that's true. And on AI readiness, the companies, I totally agree with you that we reserve as a company teaching other companies to do AI. It's mostly cultural change and the political change inside the organization.
Well, political change is, kudos to JLP for getting tools in. There are many companies that you would think are more innovative, that are still trying to do stuff like, we need to choose the one ideal thing, but some people want cursor, some people want this, so we've chosen nothing. It's like,
Which is insane.
make one choice and go, otherwise, you start losing staff eventually, and then go and work somewhere else.
Or figuring out data to the point that, we need to figure out data before we implement it.
Yeah, we need perfect data and then we can do predictions. I used to say that stuff 10 years ago, and now I hate my former self for peddling that. And it's true. The better the data you put in, the better data you get out. But again, the cost of making data useful keeps dropping. And if we just leave it sitting there and we don't do anything with it, some competitor will say, well, I worked for an automotive company in the UK. We had a vehicle listing website, a product listing page type thing. It competed with AutoTrader. It was the number 2 to AutoTrader. And so we're not going to pass them through any conventional means. And I realized, we need to keep selling the same ads and listings to car dealers. But what if we could sell to manufacturers the true comparison set of the Ford Fiesta? So when people look for a Ford Fiesta, what are all of the vehicles? Because all the automotive manufacturers, they have a comparison set in their head, but it's, at that time, it was increasingly unhinged from the real comparisons consumers were making. We had all of that consumer intent data, and we had no way to get it or make sense of it. This is like 8-9 years ago. So there was a whole extra product. We were selling these ads to a car dealer for one ad for a week is £10. The hundreds of thousands of consumers browsing, we could have productized that and sold that for millions, tens of millions to automotive manufacturers. but we couldn't, we didn't, there were other priorities. So that's one thing but if I could send today's tech back, my team could have built it, but at the time we didn't have all the skills or the tech to do it. So yeah, I've lost many opportunities, which is why I always say, use the data you're already sitting on.
Thank you. Thank you. Mohammed?
Okay,
One more.
Sean, thank you. Nice presentation. Just wanted to question about the company you're representing, Devon. So you are providing like software developers with AI, or you teach other software developers inside companies how to make their work more productive?
So for 20 years, we've been providing software teams that inevitably leads to training or consultancy. And then so some customers have then asked us, well, how did you do it inside your company? So both ways. Sometimes we have customers where we help them develop software by consultancy or teams, and they say, well, we need to improve our practices overall. Because we've been doing it for 20 years and rode the agile wave and the DevOps and the cloud wave, there's a lot of repeat value, which is good. But we've also trained some organizations. The biggest one was a 300-person organization where they just said, started last year, we need to train 300 people in AI and SDLC because our CFO was asking about the ROI on the GitHub Copilot licenses. So a lot of this came from that experience. We made some assumptions like, let's craft exercises that match their context as best as we can, like off-the-shelf exercises, but let's also get people to bring their code base along. Every software developer will want to work on their code base in front of strangers with AI. No, half of those developers did not want to because it's a high-stress, high-risk situation. So that informs the whole, AI adoption is very personal. But that has helped them now realize, actually, we can find lots of ways to do it. It's different for every team. So we're very traditional. We help other people develop software company, but because we know that if we are not the ones teaching them how to use AI to do that, and if we don't teach our people to be very good at that, we don't have a business in 2 to 5 years. So existential threat made us move faster, but don't let it catch you by surprise either.
Thank you.
Yeah, another last question.
Thanks for presentation. Maybe the question I have about, you talk about a lot how much value you can see in data. My question is, have you ever had a case when, yes, you had the data, but you couldn't actually use it in one way or another just because of compliance reasons or some other reasons? Because in many cases, this hygiene in terms of data is not there. You have data, but it is restricted for some reasons. So did you have a case when, yes, the data was there, but you just couldn't use it?
Yeah, so most of my career, that was the problem. I went through the GDPR period while the big data science thing was also peaking, right? So a lot of promises had been made. GDPR comes in, the promises weren't good promises, and then already things got difficult. And it's all true. There's a lot of data that you can't and you shouldn't use. All I'm saying is that if you have a digital product, if you have a software product, that is some of the least, I'm not talking about the transactional data, who bought what, but just how people navigated a web page. It's one of the least risky in terms of compliance. It's one of the easiest things to build anonymous user profiles, right? So there's always hoops to jump through to get to any data. And I learned all of those things. But in the automotive company I was talking about, we had a subsidiary that had data that we wanted. In my 4 years there, we made 8 separate attempts, different tactics to get their data, and we were blocked every time. And what I'm saying and what Daniel picked up on is a lot of this is just kind of sitting there. No one's going to stop you, and there's also very little risk. Say, you know what, people, we have a lot of hits on this page. and the next logical page after that one would be that one, but no one ever lands there from this page. And currently, it's like your marketing people or someone who's trying to stitch together referral URLs, and they're on that non-software engineer side of it. Which was any software engineer before AI, like a 3-minute job to build some kind of tree, right, and to define it. So it's good to think about compliance and the barriers to getting data, but there's a lot, if you're developing software that is just sitting there, which if you treat it anonymously, is incredibly low risk to use to improve your product. When you start joining it onto transactions and personal details and all kinds of other stuff, yes, that triggers more investigation and more danger. But just that usage data, is a gold mine that people are just sort of walking past, in my view.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe the next step in this case would be have data generation, like logs generation, be part of your feature.
Now you're talking crazy. Yeah. So data people like me have tried to solve this with a thing called data contracts, which is me as a data person who depends on your data for my machine learning model or whatever. I put a hook into your CI/CD process that you can't push code, push a change if it violates some downstream schema. During Black Friday, what happens to the contract? Right. So it's a classic data people trying to reverse engineer a solution to a problem. But the best practice and the reason why the likes of Snowplow, we don't work with them or sell them, but they made it so easy for developers to make it easy to track and create that data up front that it's like, why would you not do it? So that's the last frontier. Make it part of creating. Now, when you have a physical product and you have a store, we've been measuring this stuff for a very long time. But when your product doesn't even exist because it's digital, it's interesting. You have to recreate measurement every single time. But yes, that is the answer. And the cool thing is, if you create that data up front in any halfway sensible way, LLMs are now good enough to just analyze stuff about it without needing to go and talk to a data team. But you as a developer and a product person could just do reasonably sophisticated analysis if the data was created in the first place, rather than creating a whole bunch of new tickets in someone else's thing. Tell me what happened in my product. But yeah, if you create that data up front, which is super easy, just developers didn't know that there was an incentive for them to do that. Because it's off the core development path.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thanks everyone.
Thanks to Sean and Riley. Thank you so much for graciously coming and joining us. And if we can also agree you to join our mentorship program, I'm sure there will be not just guys in the room, but others who would like to ask their questions to reach out.
Happy to, especially if someone builds that startup that does this last mile. I think it's
Fantastic, thank you. And yeah, I welcome you guys to come outside, start networking. Pizza will arrive in 10-15 minutes, and we have to leave the building at 8:15 or so. And yeah, that's last words. And thank you so much for hosting us, Databooks.